Hey Chloe, I wanted to answer your question um, about capitalism. I have some thoughts, but I thought it might be too much to put in a comment. So I'm making this video, and I'm wearing a Holden Caulfield Thinks You're a Phone Me T-shirt. Um, I love this T-shirt. Anyway, so I think that capitalism is a system that works very well for a small number of people, and it's a system that's definitely superior to a lot of things that we've tried in the past. But the point of having the point in any economic system, I think, in like advancing a new economic system, is always to create kind of more freedom for more people. Um, Amartya Sen is a Nobel Prize winning economist, and he's famous for what's called the capabilities approach. And he draws from lots of economists and political philosophers in the past who basically assert that, including Adam Smith. Adam Smith even, asserted that the reason to make money is to be able to do things. Um, and when we went from feudalism to, um, you know, freer markets, um, we we created more freedom for more people, more capabilities for more people. But we've reached a point where I don't think that capitalism necessarily works that well for everyone. Um, in capitalism, unless you're a rich person, then your choices are pretty limited. Um, and especially if you're someone who, isn't very skillful, you know, um, isn't very well educated, which probably makes you poor, um, then your choices are even more limited. So, for example, let's say that like I'm someone who is just low skill labor, and I go to find a job, and I find something about the job objectionable. Maybe there's some moral aspect to it that I don't agree with, or maybe something in the work itself. There are lots of kinds of jobs that some people can't do, and for some people, there's very specific things that they need in a job in order to feel fulfilled, or even to just be able to do them. And we might not all understand what all those things are for everyone, but that doesn't mean that they're illegitimate. And so if you go to one employer and there's something that you don't like about the job and you're low skill labor, then you might go to a second employer and see about getting a job, and you might get offered a job, and you basically find that the conditions under which you would have to work are basically the same as in the case of the first employer, potential employer, prospective employer, um, and so on and so forth. And that's a distinction that is important in that if you're a wealthy person, you have a lot of choices. You can opt out. You can, choose to not have a business. You can choose to not employ people. You can choose to go and work for someone else. If you have enough money, then you can go and seek higher education. It's not something that's financially feasible for everyone in this country at this time, and that's kind of another issue. But um, you get a lot more choices, and some people, through accidental birth, are born with more choices by way of just you know being born wealthy and having all things that come with wealth. And so the way that capitalism works is it, and we've seen this especially in the last 30 years, is eventually people, a few people become powerful enough that they get to start to write the rules for everyone else. They write the rules in ways that um, benefit them. And what that ends up meaning is that they extract wealth from people who aren't rich, um, and in that way they're able to concentrate wealth and power. And once they do that, they get even more influence in society, and they're able to more freely write the rules. This is a big problem in America today. And so eventually, wealthy people are kind of coming up with all the rules for everyone else, and everyone else just has to follow them. If you're a poor person, and then you have to go and work for someone. You don't have a choice. Someone mentioned that taxation is slavery, but I would argue that that's not really how it is. In fact, I would say that capitalism creates slaves out of working people, people who have to work. Um, and we talk a lot about the virtue and hard work and all that, but really that idea benefits rich people more than it benefits anyone else. If instead, for example, everybody got everything that they needed in order to survive somehow, they got all the food that they needed, clothes, a place to live, et cetera, healthcare, in order to live good lives, preferably even education, free education. If everybody had those things, then the working part would be something that would just like then it would have more value. Then it would be like, well, you're working because you see the value in doing these things that require work. And we're heading as a society to a place where um, we're not going to need as many people to work at some point. We might choose to have people work in creative fields, but at some point, we're not going to need people, cashiers. We're not going to need factory workers. We're not going to need a lot of these jobs. It's far in the future, um, but the fact is that it basically creates slaves right now. So the idea that there's an idea in America, especially in the Western world, that people's value comes from their ability to do things that are good for society and to like make money and all those sorts of things. But I think that all people are valuable, and it doesn't matter if you're less able than someone, or less skillful, or whatever the case may be. Um, and even if we could choose the people who were the best for doing jobs, um, to do those jobs, and that people didn't have all these distinct advantages going into it. I don't know that that would be fair either. This idea of meritocracy, I'm not sure that it's a good idea for society or for the individuals in society. Um, and just to kind of illustrate some of what I'm talking about, there's an epidemiologist who did a lot of research on um, ties between status and health. And what he came up with was that the higher your status, and he broke it down into all kinds of different categories. So, in terms of like your job, like what kind of job you have, what your education is, how much wealth you have, what your income is, um, your race, your height, even. The higher your status in society, the healthier you tend to be. But also, that the healthier you tend to be, the easier it is to increase your status, and vice versa. Or, I mean, the opposite of that is true too. So, like, if you're unhealthy, it's harder to gain status, and you're more likely to lose status. So, there's a moral imperative, I think, in that, the more equality we can create, obviously, the fairer it is in a lot of ways. Um, and, you know, it leads to better outcomes for everyone, I think, in lots of different ways. So, whether it comes to health or, I mean, like crime is important, I think. I think it's just kind of having everyone on the same page is like a very good idea. And where we see people more equal in society, they tend to do better as societies and the individuals within those societies. Scandinavian countries in particular, I think, get it right largely, and they're not nearly as capitalistic as some other places.